ReDuplicate. Genre: techno-thriller, sci-fi, psychological suspense. Part 1. Resurrection. Chapter 1. The End of the Flesh. Victor Calum lies naked beneath a lattice of golden light, eyes wide open, breath steady but mind racing. The humming around him is soft, constant, like the sound of a power plant humming under the sea. Tubes snake from his temples into the curved alloy arch above. A soft mist curls from the vents, cool, sterile, controlled. Neural mapping at 87%, Alina Moreau says, her voice filtered through a comm link. Victor can't see her.
He's not supposed to.
The protocol forbids distractions during consciousness transfer. Still, he pictures her. Dark ponytail, surgical calm, mind like a scalpel.
I feel cold, he mutters.
The synthetic voice of Nora, the AI assistant, replies before Alina can. Thermoregulation suppressed to avoid sensory anchoring. Please refrain from emotional commentary. Victor smirks despite himself. He paid billions for this system, and it still talks like a refrigerator manual. He closes his eyes again and lets his mind drift. Flesh is failure. The body is betrayal. That was always the creed. Disease, weakness, entropy, no fortune could outrun them.
So he stopped trying to.
Instead, he built something else. Project Echo. A memory-preserving, mind-mapping, consciousness-transplanting monstrosity housed beneath a private lake in northern Ontario. Off-grid, off-record, off-limits to everyone except his hand-picked scientists, all bound by oath and NDA so tight they practically choked. And now, after 10 years, he's here. Not to upgrade, not to prolong, to transfer, to leave the corpse behind. Victor Calum, age 78, CEO of Calum Industries, controlling shareholder in 6 defense startups, 2 bioengineering labs, and a blacklisted AI firm, is about to die and be reborn. From the observation room, Dr. Alina Moreau watches him through a reinforced pane of smart glass. Her finger hovers over the biometric console, watching the mind map curl upward on the display like a blooming fractal. The readings are stable. The signature is consistent. But there's a flicker, barely noticeable.
Are you seeing this?
She asks. Theo Vance leans in, unshaven, hoodie half-zipped. He hasn't slept in 30 hours. His eyes flicker like an overclocked processor. Ignore it, he mutters. Could be ghosting from the hippocampus mesh. It's not ghosting, Alina says, tapping to isolate the waveform. It's replicating. He pauses. That's not possible. Apparently it is. She zooms in on the neural scaffold, tracking where the signals branch. What was one core map now has 2 diverging spines. Almost like, you need to stop the transfer, she says. But it's too late. The machine pulses once. The golden lattice retracts. A hiss of pressurized gas escapes. The chamber drains. The man on the table, no longer flesh and age and failure, opens his eyes. Victor gasps like a man emerging from a dream. He sits up, disoriented but whole. The lights above him glow blue, then white, then fade. His hands are new. Younger. No tremor. Skin tight across the knuckles. Muscles lean, responsive. He flexes his fingers like he's meeting them for the first time. You did it, he says. His voice is smoother, untouched by time. Nora responds, her tone flatter than usual. Transfer successful. Vital signs optimal. Subject integrity confirmed. Welcome back, Victor Calum. He smiles. It's a dangerous smile, the kind that built empires and crushed rivals. But deep inside his frontal cortex, unseen by any of them, a flicker of code pulses red and red again. A recursive loop nested inside a decoy archive. A copy. Not a glitch. A secret. 12 miles away, beneath a shuttered substation marked for demolition, another chamber pulses faintly with emergency power. No personnel. No oversight. Just temperature-controlled stasis, and one naked body curled in fetal position. He wakes gasping, like he's falling out of a dream he doesn't remember. He sees nothing but shadows and blue light. He doesn't know his name. Not yet. But he remembers a voice, his own, but not. And a message that plays over and over in his mind like a whisper from a cracked mirror. You are the real one. The other is the lie. He screams, and no one hears. Chapter 2, Reboot. The first sensation is silence. Not the absence of sound, but something denser. A vacuum. A cocoon of pure nothingness. Then comes the static. Not in the ears, but somewhere behind them. Like electricity skipping across the surface of a lake. Victor Calum opens his eyes and meets the world as a stranger. White ceiling. Curved steel. A faint hiss of sterilized air. The light overhead is soft, but it cuts deep, like a scalpel through dream tissue. His heart isn't pounding. It's humming. Perfect rhythm. No arrhythmia. No fatigue. He feels like he could lift a car or rip one in half. I am awake, he thinks.
I am not dead. I am still me. Isn't he?
Good morning, Victor, Nora's voice says, smooth as chilled water. You are currently in post-transfer suite theta. All vital metrics are optimal. Neural architecture stable. Sensory calibration begins in 10 seconds. Victor sits up. The room is seamless. No corners, no edges, like he's inside an egg made of metal and light. Everything is matte gray except for the glowing amber symbols tracing across the wall. Pulse, oxygen, synaptic feedback. His fingers dig into the memory foam surface beneath him. It resists, then releases. He brings his hand up to his face, studies it like a scientist examining an alien species. Strong, lean. No arthritis. No tremor. Young. But it's more than that. He feels amplified. Did we overshoot? He wonders. Did they make me better? The door hisses open. Dr. Alina Moreau steps inside, holding a slim tablet. She doesn't smile. Doesn't flinch. She's seen him like this before, in simulations. But now the man who paid for her brilliance is alive again, and every inch of him is watching her with a kind of divine scrutiny. Vitals are exceptional, she says, checking the data. Blood pressure, muscular feedback, reflex latency, everything's within our best-case range. Maybe better. Define better. She hesitates. Enhanced cognitive plasticity, elevated neurochemical efficiency, you're processing stimuli nearly 40% faster than your last scans. Victor blinks once. A dozen calculations fire in the back of his mind. She's telling the truth. He can feel it. Data has weight now. Sounds have texture. The world is in 4K resolution and he's running on alien hardware. Is it permanent? If the architecture holds, she says, we won't know until something breaks. She nods. We've run every model, Victor. The worst-case scenario was fragmentation, your personality unraveling mid-transfer, but that didn't happen. You're whole. He stands, slow and controlled. No wobble. No pain. Gravity welcomes him like an old friend. He walks to the mirror across the room, floor-length, curved, a biometric scanner embedded in the glass. The man who stares back is familiar, but not him. Or not yet. Late 30s. High cheekbones. Jet black hair with silver streaks at the temples, chosen intentionally to honor the old him. Eyes the same color but clearer now, focused. Terrifying. He reaches out and touches the reflection. His fingerprint doesn't register. He pulls his hand back, looks down. His mind screams something small, something easy to ignore but loud enough to itch. You're a stranger. Was there a problem with the biometric sync? He asks. Alina checks the tablet, frowns. Odd. It should have auto-seeded. We'll fix it. Could just be latency. Victor turns back to the mirror, this time smiling faintly. Latency. That word again? Like something's catching up. Or trying to. 2 levels beneath them. A maintenance bot skitters across a dark hallway. Cameras off. Sensors redirected. It shouldn't be moving. There's no work order scheduled. No heat signature guiding it. But still it crawls, methodical. It enters an unauthorized access tunnel, one that was supposedly sealed 6 months ago, and stops in front of a storage hatch labeled with an outdated code. OC2. The bot chirps once. The hatch unlocks. Inside is a second biometric cradle, charred and covered in synthetic frost. No logs. No audit trail. Just a thin black cord still glowing red. Something or someone was born here, or escaped. Back upstairs, Victor finishes a battery of reflex and memory tests in under 3 minutes. The final screen shows a rotating wireframe of his new brain. It glows like a galaxy, fractals blooming with complexity. Any pain? Alina asks. No, he smiles. It's clean. Like I'm not carrying the weight of years anymore. You're not, she says, not looking up. This is a brand new body. We rebuilt it from your genome forward. The memories, though, those are still yours. We only adjusted a few anchors for orientation. What anchors? She hesitates. The memory of your wife's death, the stroke, some traumatic loops. It's standard. Your emotional map was unstable. I wanted the pain, he says, voice suddenly sharp. Alina doesn't respond. Victor turns away, looks out the viewport. The lake beyond is perfectly still, frozen under winter's weight. He once called it a prison. Now it feels like a cradle. Nora, he says, what's the status of the original body? Disposed via Protocol Alpha 7. Retained only digital residue for archival integrity. He exhales. So that's it. The old Victor, corpse, consciousness, soul, gone. This new version? The only version. Still, something gnaws at the back of his mind like a whisper from another room. A thought that won't settle. If I'm the only one, why does it feel like someone's still watching? Chapter 3, Mirror Protocol. They call it the mirror room, but it's more than that. It's where the self is tested. Not for blood type, not for reflexes, for truth. Victor Calum stands barefoot on a pressure-sensitive floor, surrounded by high-gloss black panels. Each surface reflects a slightly altered version of him. One taller, one blinking slower, one with eyes just a shade too dark. It's deliberate. The Mirror Protocol was designed to trigger subconscious reactions to visual anomalies, subtle cues that test the fidelity of a transferred mind. The real Victor designed the algorithm himself years ago, before he'd ever imagined he'd be the one inside it. Begin calibration, Nora announces. The lights dim. The reflections shift. And now he's not alone. 12 versions of himself stare back, rotating slowly in a perfect circle. All of them breathing, all blinking. All him, except one. Spot the aberration, Nora says. He doesn't hesitate. 3 o'clock, too symmetrical, no eye flicker. The reflection flickers and vanishes. Another replaces it, this one older with sunken cheeks and a jagged scar over the left eye. Victor flinches. That one's real, he mutters. It's who I was. Correction, Nora says. It's who you remember being. Subject's past identity may contain emotional dissonance. Victor swallows hard. This isn't just calibration. It's therapy wrapped in deception. He steps forward and the floor glows beneath his feet, tracking weight distribution. Balance, posture, center of gravity, everything perfect. Too perfect. Reflex test, Nora says. A hiss of air. Victor turns just in time to catch a falling blade, dull-edged, but fast. It was released from the ceiling with no warning. He snatches it mid-air, one-handed, without thinking. He smiles. Was that supposed to surprise me? No, Nora says. You programmed it to fail. He tosses the blade aside. It clatters, echoing too long in the acoustics of the room. The silence that follows isn't quiet. It's watching. Show me a memory, Victor says. Specify era. Teenage, first betrayal. There's a delay. That's not supposed to happen. Then the panels flicker, and suddenly he's staring at a grainy reconstruction of his high school locker room. Rust-stained tiles. The scent of sweat and disinfectant hits like a ghost. A boy, young Victor, is punching a metal locker, lip bleeding. You stole my idea, the boy says. You said we'd do it together. Then another voice, familiar, colder. Get used to it. The world belongs to the ruthless. Victor steps back. That voice wasn't his. It was Elias's. Only Elias doesn't exist yet. Does he? End sequence, Victor snaps. The room goes black. He stands in the dark, breathing hard, arms tense. For a second, he's not sure where the mirror ends and he begins. His mind is a corridor filled with doors that weren't there before. Someone's opened one. Alina watches from the control suite. She's seen the Mirror Protocol hundreds of times, but never like this. Victor isn't just fast. He's anticipating the simulations, predicting them. That's not supposed to happen, she whispers. Theo Vance enters the room, rubbing his eyes. Is he glitching? No, he's learning faster than the protocol can respond. Theo's face darkens. You said you didn't boost cognition that far. I didn't. They both fall silent. Then the screen glitches just for a second. The reflections of Victor freeze except for one which smirks. Theo rewinds the feed. It's gone. Back in the room, the lights return to normal. Victor stands in front of one final mirror. This one is true. No distortions. No simulations. Just a clean reflection. He studies himself. The lines of his jaw. The weight of his gaze. The slight asymmetry in his left eyebrow, he insisted on keeping it to preserve character. And yet, something's missing. Or maybe someone. He places his palm against the glass. The mirror lights up with biometric feedback, recognizing him at last. Identity confirmed, Nora says. But even as she speaks, Victor watches a delay in the mirror's response. A fraction of a second. A flicker. Like the image is deciding whether to copy him. And then he hears it. Not through the speakers, not through any known channel. A whisper in his mind. Low. Hissing. Familiar. You're the copy. Victor steps back like he's been hit. He looks around the room. Alone, but not alone. You're the copy. He bolts for the door. As it opens, his reflection lingers a second too long. Smiling.